I thought I'd begin with something earth-shaking.
Okay.
In late February, a powerful quake shook Chile,
Yes.
the country you once, and perhaps still, call home.
Yes.
It was hardly the first of its kind. Indeed, in your 1998 memoir, Heading South, Looking North, you described the massive quake that hit Chile 50 years ago next month, the most powerful quake on record. Though it left terrible destruction in its wake, the quake, you write, also had a galvanizing force. Coming just a few months after Fidel Castro's revolution in Cuba, the quake, in your telling, served to energize the Chilean population and ultimately pave the way for Salvador Allende's election 10 years later. So my question to you is this: is there any chance that this most recent quake will have such wide-ranging repercussions?
Well, let me start by saying that as a writer, I exaggerate everything. And therefore, to suppose that really that earthquake, you know, when you write your life, you take one event and you try to make it resonate and make it really significant. I think what I was doing is I was equating my own consciousness with that of Chile, because I had just gone into the university at that point. And so I had lived a rather isolated existence. Mm-hmm. What that quake did at that point, and I speak about this in the CNN.com commentary that I made almost immediately after this earthquake. I was in the stadium, and the stadium rocked up and down, and the mountains disappeared. It was like a cradle. I mean, it was really quite extraordinary. But it shattered a lot of things in Chile. And for me specifically, I spent the next few months going into the shanty towns, the slum areas of Chile, and meeting a lot of the people of Chile who were so poor and yet who gave so much and so liberally of themselves. I think it was a much more important experience from the point of view of seeing the great solidarity of that country. And therefore, for me, I would say it was the chronicle of a revolution foretold, in that sense, you know, of something that was going to happen because these people were wonderful. I know that I'm creating a sort of a myth in that sense. But for a young 17-year-old, this was earth-shattering and eye-opening, right? Because my political ideas from my Bolshevik father and my compassionate mother, etc., had always been sort of left-wing, right? But to find myself all of a sudden thrust into that situation was a very significant one in relation to having this contact with el pueblo, with people I'd never really known, you know. What happens now in Chile, and what I make the relationship with, is I'm not sure what this new earthquake will do. Because since that earthquake, almost 50 years ago, we survived the earthquake called Pinochet. So the idea is if we survive that earthquake, maybe we'll survive this one as well. But the country that I look at from afar and that I visit from time to time, which may or may not be home, I don't even know what home means anymore, we'll probably get to that. That country has become extremely individualistic, very egocentrical, and has bought into a dream of Chile which is different than the one that I saw 50 years ago among those people. So I don't know if this will shatter the false pretenses of, hey, we're not really Latin American, they used to say, right? And I said, you know what? Wow, you really are. We really are Latin American. So the idea of how this earthquake and every disaster creates a sort of an X-ray, an opening, a peephole, if you will, a shattering of the prejudices and illusions, and especially the delusions that people have. In this case, it's what they call in Chile at this moment, lots of people call the second earthquake, which is a social earthquake. The walls came down, and when they came tumbling down like Jericho, right, what you saw on the other side was not the enemy army. You saw your own people who were poor and who were lost and who were raiding the refrigerator. They were going to get refrigerators. Why? Because they hadn't got the refrigerators, right? They'd been told that if they were successful, they should be getting refrigerators. So the earthquake came and they went to loot the refrigerators. But what I'm trying to say with that is it depends on what the people of Chile are able to look into the mirror and see. And the mirror is not always something that one wants to look at if you're a bit monstrous, right? Which most countries are.
I'm happy to see, up until now, my relationship with you has been that of reader. and so I've known you as words on a page. It's nice to see that you speak with your hands, because it leads me to my next question.
Okay.
No.
It's fine. I'm not feeling at all repressed. In fact, I'm irrepressible, if anything. Right?
So now this next question may be the product of a misreading, but I like the question, and I'm going to ask it anyway.
Good.
So in your memoir, Heading South, Looking North, which is in many ways the story of your relationship with language, you describe the process of acquiring your first language, which was Spanish. I'm going to read a short quote.
Right.
I had behaved, you say. I had obediently learned all the ropes, imitating all the right gestures, made sounds into syllables. So my question then is twofold. You talk about imitating gestures as being part of learning a language.
Yes.
Now, does this mean that each language has its own unique gestures? And at least in that sentence, you mention gestures before you do the making of syllables. So does this mean that gestures somehow exist at a deeper level even than sound?
The short answer is probably yes, but I could probably bring to the table a series of evolutionary psychologists and people who speak about different languages with different languages in different countries, where they speak about how there are certain things that the child learns very, very early on and imitates the parents. Now, from the point of view of the evolution of the species, I think there's no doubt whatsoever that certain forms of pointing, of grunting, of moving, of singing, of communicating helped us to create this extraordinary language, which is both our hands and what is in our brain. So I think that there's something that is very, let's call it primeval, and that comes from the way the fish fins we have inside move, so we can survive in the air. And I have a feeling that that's what I'm talking about in that sense. What happens in my case, of course, and you may go to that or not, is what occurs when those gestures, when you're cut off traumatically from the gestures of the loving father and mother and the surrounding circumstances. The sounds become foreign sounds. And in order to survive, you have to acquire a different language, different gestures, etc. So, if I speak in Spanish, cuando yo hablo en castellano, por ejemplo, yo hablo muchísimo like this. In other words, my gestures become even more of gesticulations, let's say, right? But what happens in those circumstances and how you become bilingual is really what the book is fundamentally. I mean, it's about many things. But it's about how you end up becoming, how you end up reconciling yourself to your duality and understanding the richness of that duality. And that there's a tragic form of it, but basically the richness is much better than the tragedy.
Seeing as the hall we're sitting in is in the shadow of where the Twin Towers once stood, I feel duty-bound to ask a question about September 11.
Yes.
You've written thoughtfully and provocatively about the attacks of 2001, not least because September 11th, 1973, was the day that Pinochet toppled the Allende government and in the process turned your life upside down.
Yes.
I'd like to read a few lines of an op-ed you published just a couple of days after the 2001 attack. This was in the LA Times. A crisis of this magnitude can lead to renewal or destruction. It can be used for good or for evil, for peace or for war, for aggression or for reconciliation, for vengeance or for justice, for the militarization of a society or its humanization. So the question then is this: 8.5 years on, how do you think we've fared?
What do you mean we, Kemosabe? At the beginning of that? No, but I mean in the following sense. You know, when the September 11th attacks came, I was really floored by it, doubly, because the two cities. This is the city of my childhood. It's my city. It's a city I love. I love the immensity of the city. I love the fact that the city has all this richness and this culture in it. And of course, the attack was attack against that that form. It wasn't just attacking the United States, the empire, things like it was attack against a certain way of life of that city, which was my way of life as well.